It's great to be here with all of you. Thank you for inviting me to come. I am the legal director of the ACLU of New Jersey, and the organization has been around for more than 60 years, and our mission is to preserve, advance, and expand individual rights and liberties guaranteed by our state and federal constitutions. And we do that by working in the courts, in the legislature, and in our communities to advance these rights. So I'm going to give you some information about these rights, but because I'm a lawyer, I have to tell you that I'm not giving legal advice, and that if you're concerned about a particular situation, I'd encourage you to, if you have particular things going on, you should consult with a lawyer or with your union. So a legal principle I want to remind you about is that our constitutional rights are about our relationship to the government. And so our state and federal constitutions limit what a state's action can be. And so one of the reasons I'm speaking with you tonight is because Rutgers is a public entity and has to comply with the Constitution. I'm going to talk about sources of the protection for free expression, but academic freedom is one aspect of free expression, and it's sourced in our Constitution. And so our most well-known protection, obviously, is the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, where it says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. And over time, that's been interpreted through the 14th Amendment to apply to states and public entities like Rutgers. I also don't want us to forget that in New Jersey, we have our state constitutions, Article 1, Paragraph 6, where it says, every person may freely speak, write, and publish his sentiments on all subjects. And this is an independent protection for free expression. And where the federal constitution provides the floor, the minimum, states can go above and beyond that. And our state Supreme Court in New Jersey has described New Jersey's right of expression as affirmative, right? Everyone has the right to freely speak. It's not about contracting the government, but allowing individuals. And the court said that it's practically broader than all others in the country. So we have some of the strongest state constitutional protections for our speech and expression here in New Jersey. Another source of rights are collective bargaining agreements and contracts and Rutgers policies. I know you've had tremendous success with your negotiations, and I won't be weighing in on what kinds of contractual protections you have, and I think Britt and others are going to be covering some of that later on. And so the two big buckets I thought I'd talk about briefly today is your academic freedom, and then also the freedom to express yourself as a private person. You've got some protections contractually that protect both of those, but that's how we think about them as lawyers. Turning to academic freedom, that protects constitutionally, that protects you as faculty, and it's grounded in these free expression principles. And it means you have the liberty to conduct research and draw conclusions that are rooted in evidence. But it isn't absolute, and it is subject to balancing against competing interests that a university might have. New Jersey's Supreme Court has weighed in on it a couple of times and has talked about it as a special constitutional concern and one of the essential freedoms of universities. And it really protects faculty or allows faculty to present relevant topics in your classrooms or in your scholarship, even if they're controversial, and that's without fear of reprisal or censorship. And this follows U.S. Supreme Court precedents that were established a long time ago, where they recognize the vibrancy of speech in the classroom is critical to the health of American society. And one of the seminal cases on this is called Sweezy versus State of New Hampshire. And the U.S. Supreme Court there said no one should underestimate the vital role in a democracy that is played by those who guide and train our youth. Teachers and students must always remain free to inquire, to study, to evaluate, to gain new maturity and understanding. Otherwise, our civilization will stagnate and die. And those are lofty words about what it means and the role you play in our culture. And this is the case where, I don't know if you've heard this before, but there are these 4 freedoms of a university that Justice Frankfurter talked about in a separate part of that case. And that is for a university to determine for itself on academic grounds who may teach, what may be taught, how it shall be taught, and who may be admitted to study. And this is like foundational principles around academic freedom. One of the things, so ACLU of New Jersey recently weighed in on an academic freedom case in a New Jersey appellate court. And one of the sources for our approach to it was the 1940 Statement of Principles on Academic Freedom and Tenure that the AAUP and the American Association of Colleges and Universities promulgated. And I can put that in the chat in a little bit. But that's, I think, known as the quintessential definition of principles of academic freedom in the United States. And that's something we turn to. And I'll tell you, we were in court, right? about academic freedom, because we have these great legal protections, but like most of our rights, they aren't always respected in practice. And academic freedom is a important topic that's going on around a hot contested topic around the country. And I can tell you that one thing, getting ready for tonight, I was looking for cases around this, and there just aren't that many. And in this case that we were recently involved in, I can tell you that the appellate court panel, which was like the panel before the New Jersey Supreme Court, seemed really hostile to the concept of academic freedom as it applied to individual professors. And so I can just say that we have these rights, but I think it's going to take a lot of work to breathe life into them and make sure they're enforced. And so in that case that we're involved in, the professor has asked the New Jersey Supreme Court to hear her case, and we're waiting to hear if they will. So fortunately, it sounds like you have these terrific protections through Rutgers policies in your contract. And then I'll just quickly talk about, so there's your life as an academic, and then separately under the First Amendment, you have the right as a public employee to speak on matters of public concern. And you can do that if you're speaking as a private person about a matter of public concern and your speech doesn't interfere with your job. And so the idea is that just because you work for a state government doesn't mean you lose your First Amendment right to comment on things that are political, social, concern to the community. And generally the principles that the university shouldn't be firing you, demoting you, just taking any adverse action against you for your speech that you're making as a private person out in the world that would, because of what you're saying. And I guess also I'll leave that one there. And I think there might be some students attending. And so I just wanted to bring up protest rights. And I'll put some links in the chat regarding an FAQ on protest rights. But the right to assemble and express your views and protest is part of a functioning and critical aspect of our American culture. And there are several protections under the First Amendment. But the government can place what we call TPM, time, place, and manner restrictions on protests. I have to say I'm a little bit sore about learning that there are free speech zones at Rutgers. When I was a student, that wasn't the case. And I'm sure Rutgers argues that it's an appropriate place restriction. And so that might limit your ability to where you organize events and protests, but it shouldn't impact your ability to share information, gather, and discuss things. And then I guess I'll just leave you with one important thing to know is that regardless of whatever restrictions the university can put on your speech, and hopefully it's not many and all of that, but one thing they cannot do under the First Amendment principles is discriminate against speech based on viewpoint, right? So if they're allowing folks to put flyers up on bulletin boards, they can't remove one because of the view it represents. Or if people are allowed to gather here to talk about one topic, they can't preclude others from gathering there too. If you feel like your free speech rights have been violated, please feel free to file an online complaint with the ACLU of New Jersey. We have an intake team that reviews everything coming in, and we're paying particular attention now to people in high school and colleges, because we know that there's a lot of vibrant discussion happening and concerns about suppression of ideas. And with that, I will turn it over to whoever's up next.
Hello, everyone. I'm Audrey Truschke. I am the chair of Rutgers AAUP-AFT Academic Freedom Committee. And in my capacity there, that means that I advocate on behalf of the union for the academic freedom of Rutgers professors and our graduate student workers. I typically do that with the Rutgers administration and in the public sphere. Now, I came to this position as Academic Freedom Committee head because my own academic freedom was threatened, and it continues to be. And so my comments today draw upon both my personal experience as well as my more general work on academic freedom. And I want to comment to you on three basic areas. First, I want to talk about types and tactics of academic freedom attacks, especially focusing on what we're seeing in the current moment. Then I want to say a few words on what it's like to be a target. And I'll end with why we must defend academic freedom within the university setting always. Types of academic freedom attacks. I generally break them into two types regarding origins. First, academic freedom attacks can come from groups and individuals that are outside the university. For example, my attackers tend to be Hindu nationalists who follow a far-right ideology of Hindu supremacy. They usually have nothing to do with Rutgers. Some of you have probably never heard of Hindu nationalism, but probably all of you are familiar with other more widely known far-right groups in the United States. And the far right overall is, by a long shot, the biggest source of academic freedom attacks at present. So for example, we have the Koch network. They do a lot of anti-free speech advocacy. We have Canary Mission. They target students and professors based on their views on Palestinian rights. In recent weeks, Accuracy in Media has gotten a lot of press coverage. Their big thing is doxing professors and students based on perceived political views. And I underscore perceived because despite their name, Accuracy in Media has actually gotten this wrong on a number of occasions. That's all external. The second major source of academic freedom attacks is from within the university. Probably most common are from administrators, the people who have power over professors and graduate student workers. Through those administrators, donors, trustees, the board of directors can also have academic freedom attacks. Perhaps a bit more unusually, we do see assaults on academic freedom from undergraduate students and from fellow faculty members or other graduate students as well. In terms of genre, okay, one major kind of academic freedom attack is an attempt to make you feel unsafe or to actually make you unsafe. Okay, so some kind of intimidation or threat. Another is doxing, the sharing of personal or private information online. Obviously, these things can overlap. And then perhaps the sort of original academic freedom attack, the most old-fashioned in a sense, is censorship. Trying to control or usually prevent you from teaching certain things in the classroom or from researching or writing about certain subjects. There's also the ultimate form of censorship, which is censoring you in the form of firing you. No matter the source of the academic freedom attack and no matter the exact form it takes, the goal is always the same. The attacks are designed to silence you, to stop your research, your teaching, and ultimately your critical thinking. Now, within the broad array of academic freedom attacks, in terms of the tactics they take, there's one that I want to highlight this evening. And I'm highlighting this one because we see it a lot right now. Also, it's a little bit tricky, right? When somebody threatens to kill you, that's not tricky to explain, right? But this one's tricky. Okay, and this is a shared tactic across far-right groups. It is as follows. They try to conflate legitimate criticism, most often of a political position or a nation state, with hatred of an entire social, religious, or ethnic group. And so in this tactic, the people who are attacking our academic freedom will say things like, criticizing white supremacy is anti-white, criticizing Zionism as anti-Semitic, criticizing Hindu nationalism as anti-Hindu. None of those things are true. Okay, those are all bad faith arguments that deliberately conflate political and social categories. But these bad faith arguments, they sometimes work because they're preying on the good faith intentions of more liberally minded people who don't want to tolerate bigotry. Now, it is surely a very good thing that we do not defend prejudices in the academy. But legitimate criticism is not bigotry. And when we shut down the former, when we prevent legitimate criticism, what we actually do is promote the latter. We promote bigotry and prejudice. Now, calling out this strategy is one defense, and possibly the only real defense, okay? And in the one-page source sheet that we will share a little bit later this evening, we do have some specific links about the anti-Zionism versus anti-Semitism point, since that's the one coming up most frequently right now. But even the ability to make this argument, what I just did, my ability to do this depends on academic freedom. It's empowering for me to be able to speak and to articulate my intellectual views. And conversely, having people threaten my academic freedom and try to take it away has been terrifying. And so I want to very briefly share some of my own experiences. Over the last 8 years, I have had folks generally outside of Rutgers. As I mentioned, these are generally Hindu nationalists who are seeking to infringe on my research do the following: threaten to kill me, threaten to rape me, threaten to do both of those things to my young children, threaten other members of my family with violence, dox me, attempt to hack my email and other online accounts, impersonate me, bring bogus ethics charges against me, try to prevent me from teaching certain materials, attempt to bar me from further travel to India, which is the focus of my scholarship, sue me for defamation in federal court, lead several campaigns to get me fired, and send me oh so much hate mail. Now, this is by no means the sum total of possible academic freedom issues and attacks. It's just the ones I have happened to face. And I think that when I list it all off, the weight of it seems so much, but I want to underscore that each thing individually has mattered and has been difficult for me. And recognizing that is important. It's important to me, and I think to anyone who has gone through this, to recognize the pain. And that's part of what gives us the strength to live through such attacks. But over the past year, the Hindu nationalist attacks on me have slowed significantly. I can't really say why. Maybe they'll start again tomorrow, who knows? But I wonder, at least tonight, if it might have something to do with the fact that they have substantively failed. I'm still alive. No one's hurt me. My accounts weren't hacked. The kids are fine. I teach what I want. Rutgers promoted me instead of firing me, and I won the defamation lawsuit. Now, there have been costs along the way. Okay, I do not want to mislead. It has not all been roses and victory, but the core attempts to infringe on my academic freedom have fallen flat. And so maybe, at least for a little while, they've stopped trying. And that's what I want to end my remarks on: why we must defend academic freedom robustly and in every instance. Because when we let an attack on academic freedom succeed, even just a little bit, that is when our attackers become emboldened and renew their efforts tenfold to destroy us and our university community. So we have to go to the mat every single time for this cherished value. So it never can be something like, oh, we'll just cancel this one event that's really upsetting this rich donor. Or maybe that one article, maybe she actually did go a little too far. It's never one event, and it's never one article. Because academic freedom is the air that we all breathe at this university, and so an attack on one is an attack on all. If we defend academic freedom every time, only then can we continue to teach, to do our research, and to promote critical thinking with our students, and to make good faith arguments. In short, it is only on the bedrock of academic freedom that we can be scholars at all. Thank you very much. Over to Britt.
Thanks so much, Audrey. I'm going to share a few slides here. But I need to have that capacity enabled, it looks like. I'm Britt Paris. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Communication and Information. I'm a member of the New Brunswick Executive Council, and I'm co-chair of the Media and Communications Committee for the union. And it's really good to see so many of my students, so many of my colleagues, and so many of my comrades on this meeting. It's good to see you all. So this is an overview of what I'll be talking about. I'm not going to belabor this structure very much. Next slide. So you're here to educate yourself with maybe the idea that you might educate your colleagues on this multifaceted issue of academic freedom so that you can better understand your rights as faculty members and as students. Jean's talked about the landscape around these particular issues or concerns of academic freedom here in New Jersey, and I'm here to talk a little bit about what it looks like here at Rutgers and how you can handle an academic freedom concern that might arise. So I have a few bullet points here. One thing you might do is just start talking to people, start talking with trusted colleagues, your union rep. This would likely reveal some new perspectives and fresh insights around whatever particular issue of academic freedom you might be having. And like you're doing with coming to this meeting, becoming aware of institutional policies and procedures around academic freedom can be helpful. Potentially, university human resources, diversity, equity, and inclusion offices, Title IX offices, and especially in our case, Rutgers unions and our contract considerations can be really helpful to you here. Jeanne and Audrey have discussed how prevalent local threats are to academic freedom and where they come from sometimes. And I want to emphasize here that not all people engaged with the university, not all faculty, not all students face these challenges equally, right? As Audrey mentioned in great detail. So those who are more vulnerable, people like grad students, lecturers, non-tenured faculty, they experience academic freedom concerns differently than tenured professors. Differences based on these job category concerns, tenure status, as well as race, nationality, gender, sexuality, and these particular intersectional concerns can influence how people experience the threat, academic freedom threats, and how secure they feel in seeking help. And in addition, there can be potential institutional obstacles. So public perception, negative attention, potential litigation might produce misalignment between the institution's disposition and academic freedom concerns. But in our case, our union contract protects academic freedom, and local union chapters, union reps, and our AAUP-AFT Academic Freedom Committee headed by Audrey can be really valuable allies to you in your academic freedom concerns. So I just have a few notes here on academic freedom protections that we have here at Rutgers. It's been instituted in policy for 70 years now. Rutgers faculty, grad workers, and postdocs have some of the strongest academic freedom protections in the nation, and it's been won through our union's advocacy. We have the right to talk and to publish and to post and to teach about controversial topics without fear of retaliation or censorship. And luckily, Jonathan Holloway has affirmed our right to academic freedom on campus, which as he should have. But to some degree, that signals institutional protection that exists at Rutgers writ large. Okay, so in terms of making a plan, you want to prepare for problems if you can. Sometimes an academic freedom attack is unexpected, but other times it is relatively predictable based on your subject matter, your prior experience. It's always best to follow security protocols that are covered in our anti-doxing guide that is available in our one-pager handout that we are disseminating. I don't know if somebody can put that in the chat or if it's already been put there. It's important to build communities of support where there can be active, productive, and meaningful discussions, work, and sharing around academic freedom. Your community of support might include, depending on your circumstances, your department chair, your campus administration, Rutgers Central Administration, some of your trusted department colleagues, your colleagues in the field more broadly. It might include some community groups, but you also want to pay attention to being particular about who you invite into some of these discussions, because some of these folks may have interests or oppositional views to what you have and may be actually interested in infringing upon your academic freedom. Our Academic Freedom Committee, our AAUP-AFT Academic Freedom Committee, is here and able to help you out and to help you contact and coordinate with other Rutgers folks. And we can also recommend and facilitate access to national groups like the AAUP National if needed. And if you imagine that you're going to have a particular academic freedom issue, for example, as I have had in the past, you're having a prominent public-facing article that you anticipate will upset certain components or certain facets of far-right groups. Not unlike Audrey, I've had this happen to me, though in a much different and smaller scale example. It does happen. And if you envision that something like this could happen, you can line up support, notify your chair, notify your dean, as well as the Academic Freedom Committee and others who you have gotten in line to support you through these. And in these cases, when you engage with administration, you want to emphasize that you expect and that you need administrators to protect your freedom to engage in these types of activities. They might not necessarily agree with the content of what you say, but that's not really, the content of speech is not generally relevant to academic freedom considerations as they exist, normally. Okay, if you're a scholar with a public profile, it's a pretty good idea to marshal a field of experts to help you deal with social media attacks and online harassment. With that said, keep in mind that you can only control so much and focus on controlling what you can. If somebody is harassing you over the phone, consider blocking their number. If it's on social media, consider blocking their account. Not all things and not all sort of aspects of online security are within your power, but you can exercise the tools that you have to keep yourself as safe as possible. So for those with classroom-oriented duties, it might be useful for you to discuss syllabi and learning objectives and how they are tied to standardized academic assessments or academic assessment requirements. You might want to discuss with your trusted colleagues and support group how you intend to communicate your ideas, and you might get some feedback on how to engage, teach, and talk about hot button topics. And importantly, explaining your research to those who are unfamiliar with its nuances, and creating inclusive teaching spaces that allow for academic freedom is a boon to us all. Oh, and I have here, consider implementing security measures for classroom protocols, such as use of devices, and especially around audio and video recording if you're talking about sensitive topics or topics that might invite infringement upon your academic freedom. Documentation can be helpful for identifying trends that you're seeing, patterns in harassment. It can be useful and important to document and also be aware of the limitations of documenting. Documenting harassment can be useful if you approach university administration or if you decide to involve other authorities. But you do want to be careful about involving the authorities at any time, especially when you have sensitive information that you may be capturing. You want to be sure that if you're involving the authorities, you want to protect your sensitive information and the sensitive information of others. Documentation can only get you so far. And like I said, among other issues, there can be risks to involving law enforcement that people ought to consider before proceeding. So it's important to adhere to the rules, the procedures and guidelines that your institution, Rutgers, has in place here. But also keep in mind that the nature of these academic freedom attacks make it intentionally very inflammatory and very difficult sometimes to adhere to these rules. Just because someone else or multiple people are careless with their speech, they take their gloves off, you should definitely not. As hard as it might be, you need to make sure that you adhere to, at all times, to relevant Rutgers codes of conduct and relevant laws. And this can impact whether you can call out some groups publicly, whether you can share private messages publicly. It impacts how you speak to and share information with different groups, including students, assuming that you're their instructor, and whether or not you should respond in any way to a particular harasser. Okay, so academic freedom is something that we have robust protections for here in New Jersey and here at Rutgers, but ultimately it is enforced by institutions in the government. We're privileged to have it here at Rutgers. We have significant institutional support, and we should do our best to use this privilege for good. In other words, make a world that's not just tolerable, but less oppressive. And so with that, I'll say thank you so much.